Welcome to Sportsbook Reviews, NBA previews for the weekend. I'm Joe Duffy of OffshoreInsiders.com, and along with Troy West of TroyWins.com, we are going to take an advanced preview of the weekend's games, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And also, we are going to take a look at the MVP odds in the NBA to see if there's any dark horses that we're looking at. And before we do get to Troy of Troy West Wins, I do want to remind you, make sure you subscribe. And I'm sure you already do, but if you don't already, subscribe to Sportsbook Reviews YouTube feed. You can not only make sure you will never, ever miss any one of our broadcasts here, where we will be recording on both Monday and Fridays and looking ahead to the upcoming games in the NBA. But of course, many great personalities here on Sportsbook Review. And of course, leave a comment. If you like this video, please feel free to share it on your social media, etc., and we will try to answer any and all inquiries. So make sure you do leave any questions and comments in the comments section. Well, Troy, we'll go at it on a day-by-day basis like we normally do. This is actually our second video, so as we did do in our first video, and we'll do in our future videos, why don't we start out with some Friday games? Any specific situations that grab you?
Yeah, this is a really interesting card tonight, Joe. I mean, the first one that I really am scratching my head on, and I'm going to more take an approach of sit back and watch and see how these things go. But you've got the Cleveland Cavaliers -4 going into Atlanta tonight. And we all know the blockbuster trade that Cleveland made yesterday, basically gutting the whole team and bringing in some fresh young blood, bringing in George Hill, Rodney Hood, Larry Nance, Clarkson. I mean, this is a whole new Cleveland Cavaliers team. To me, while I do think it's going to take a while for them to really start gelling, I think at least tonight, the motivation factor for LeBron James and that entire new ball club, I think is going to be through the roof. I don't care if they've played together or not. On paper, I think they should absolutely destroy Atlanta. But then I got myself scratching my head. Why is this thing only -4? So I don't know. To me, probably a stay away from game, but very intriguing matchup. And if I had to bet it, I probably would put my money on the Cleveland Cavaliers. Another game to look at, the LA Clippers, who had just traded Blake Griffin. They're going into the Palace tonight in Detroit. Detroit just a slight favorite at -3, and I think Detroit's the better roster. They've won 5 games in a row, and they're at home. Why are they -3, Joe? That's kind of beyond me. Again, I'll probably sit back and watch because I think they should be favored by 7.5. I'm going to sit back and watch, but those two games are really intriguing to me. You got Blake Griffin, which I got to think he's going to have a chip on his shoulder tonight to take care of business against Doc Rivers and the Clippers. And like I said, Detroit's won 5 in a row. They're in the playoff hunt. I told you that on Monday, and they've looked outstanding with Griffin back in that lineup. So I would think, boy, 3 points at home against a Clipper team that's not very good without Griffin. I'd take my chances there, but those are 2 intriguing games tonight.
Yeah, Troy, you bring up an outstanding point. There's no question that we as handicappers, what we've got to do is on a team-by-team basis, see which teams might have some chemistry issues after trades, but which teams, like you said, the Cleveland Cavaliers, that might finally get a much-needed wake-up call. I'm of course, I like it from an analytical standpoint and some situations that I'm looking at for the Friday night card. Indiana and Boston. Indiana is going to be rested versus Boston team playing back-to-back in 3 games in 4 nights. And as I said, that usually rest more times than not benefits the home team in about 65-70% of the time. When it does benefit the road team, that you really, I think it neutralizes the normal home court advantage, and there is a slight advantage. Always you want to put a check mark next to the road team. Indiana, in addition, has 2 extra days rest. The game that you talked about, Troy, Cleveland and Atlanta. Cleveland also will be rested versus Atlanta. So the situation, just like the game I just mentioned with the road team, is going to be more rested. And, keep in mind, I always talk about the spread margin. On the last show that we did together, I gave the ATS standings or the sweat barometer standings. People have different terms for it, but it's essentially how a team has done this year relative to the point spread. And I found that in college football is the biggest momentum sport. In other sports tends to be regression to the mean. So when a team has a cumulative 5-point difference in their against the spread margin average compared to their opponent, the worst team against the spread does pretty well at a 16.48 and 14.42 rate in the history of our database. So that would favor Cleveland, which has been the much worse spread team this year. Clippers and Detroit. Uh, in all these cases, the road team will have the 2 days advantage. The Clippers at Detroit, Denver at Houston, Chicago. I'm sorry, the LA Clippers at Detroit and Denver at Houston. In those cases, the road teams will have 2 extra days rest. Chicago at Minnesota. In that case, the home team Minnesota will have 2 extra days rest, as will Portland and Sacramento. So again, there's so many other factors that go into it. But as far as the things that I really do look for in advance, those rest and scheduling situations I do look for. So plenty of advantages there and big check marks on the Friday night portfolio. And I can tell you that I do have the Friday night portfolio already up at offshoreinsiders.com. Troy, I have some games I'm looking at Saturday, but first, why don't you tell me some of the games you're looking at on the Saturday card?
Yeah, two games that I've got circled. The big marquee matchup, the San Antonio Spurs traveling into Golden State. We talked Monday about this Golden State team being mentally fried, and boy, they looked mentally fried against Oklahoma City earlier this week, getting absolutely pounded at home. And it was a revenge game for Golden State. They had already lost at Oklahoma City earlier in the year, and that was a double-digit game. So I think Golden State will bounce back against San Antonio on Saturday night at Oracle. Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson. This is a veteran team, Draymond Green. I got to think that they're going to flush what happened earlier this week and finally get a big marquee game at home against the Spurs. We know the Spurs, they've been up and down all year, but without Kawhi Leonard, I don't think they're a good matchup for Golden State. So not sure where that line's going to be. I'd guess it's between the 10 and 13 range, but I like Golden State to bounce back. And the other matchup, the Phoenix Suns and the Denver Nuggets. The Phoenix Suns have been absolutely atrocious lately. It'll be interesting to see where that line comes out at. But for me, I've got a strong lean initially on the over. Phoenix Suns have been giving up points like it's an NBA All-Star game. It doesn't matter who goes in and plays. They're giving up 115 to 130 almost every single night. I think Denver, being a high-power scoring team, they'll get their points. And Denver doesn't play much of defense either. I think Phoenix will get their points in that game. I'm not sure Vegas can put a total high enough in that one. Initially, I'm on the over. I think you'll probably see it about 215 to 220, and I'd be initially on the over for the two Saturday night games.
Yeah, Troy, in fact, one of the things that we discussed during some of our games too risky to bet in football, I said that years ago, you used to be able to bet those high totals under and low totals over. The same thing applied in the NBA, but the odds makers have gotten sharper. And yeah, so very often those high totals do go over the total. So it's not quite as easy as it was when I first got started in this business back in the 1980s. As far as a couple situations I'm looking at, New Orleans and Brooklyn. Brooklyn's going to have 2 extra days rest. Denver and Phoenix. Phoenix will have 2 extra days rest as well. And, and another thing, and we'll get to the Sunday card, keep in mind, the big injury with Porzingis for the Knicks. One of those things I like to look for, usually when a team loses a superstar player, short term they rally around it, and short term they're good to go with, and then you really start fading them maybe after a maximum of 2 games. So that's another thing that we as the gamblers want to talk about. And yeah, I got some good situations for Sunday as well, but first, we'll go to Troy West at TroyWins.com.
Yeah, just a couple quick 2 games on Sunday as well. I like Oklahoma City at home going up against the Grizzlies. Yeah, last night Oklahoma City did sit Russell Westbrook for rest. Carmelo Anthony also did not play. I do suspect both those guys will play on Sunday, and they looked outstanding once again against Golden State. This Thunder team, they've been extremely bipolar throughout the course of the year, but I think if you pick your spots with them, I really do think towards now and towards the playoffs, this is a team that's going to want to enhance their seed going into the Western Conference playoffs, and this could be a team to be forced to be reckoned with. Russell Westbrook starting to play really good basketball. Paul George is really starting to mesh with them, and Carmelo Anthony starting to find his role. So on Sunday, I do like that matchup. And then like you talked about, Joe, the New York Knicks, they go into Indiana. The Knicks, they get blasted the other night against the Raptors, the first game without Porzingis. I was with you. I thought they might rally a little bit around him, but this looks like a depleted team that lost their coach, their general, the guy that everybody looked to for leadership. Who's going to step up on that New York Knicks team? I really don't have a clue. It could be you or I, Joe, for all I know, but that's a bad roster. And I think until they start covering spreads, you can't make the lines big enough. I'm going to fade the Knicks here for a while until they prove to me they can cover some spreads.
Yeah, Troy, even when I was your age, I was a below average playground basketball player. So it might be you, but it's definitely not going to be me. But yeah, make sure you answer your phone. It could be the next calling for sure. Some of the things I'm looking at for Sunday, Dallas and Houston. Houston is rested versus an opponent playing, back-to-back 3 games in 4 nights. And what we talked about before that, unless Cleveland wins in a big spread blowout, Cleveland at Boston, very likely this will be falls into what I said, the teams with the substantially worse against the spread margin. Season to date is actually a good play. Cleveland would be the play against Boston. And again, as we file this report, going back, my database, I always confuse the years that my database in the NBA, I think goes back to about 1990, but it's 1648 and 1442 during that span. And in fact, this angle is even better when the inferior spread team is playing on the road. We'll get to the NBA MVP, our dark horse candidates in a moment. But, I like to also throw in some of the stuff that I like to use as far as the hottest teams scoring-wise over the last 5 games. Utah far and away best in the league at 121.5. So that's good for both the total and the side. Houston next, not surprisingly, at 120. Denver at 116. And I know Troy alluded to that they're scoring, not playing much defense. And Toronto 115.5 at the other end. The Knicks, now without their best player, only averaging 86.4 points per game over the last 5, far and away the worst in the league, followed by Memphis at 93.4 and Phoenix at 95.7. So a lot of that consistent, of course, with the season-to-date statistics, but, that is also some of the hottest and the coldest offenses in the NBA. Well, Troy, how about the league MVP, James Harden, the overwhelming favorite? Of course, it varies from sportsbook to sportsbook, but I've got him at 37 to 100, so you'd have to actually risk $100 just to win $37. King James, 65 to 25, and there's a reason they call him Giannis, but Giannis Antetokounmpo is at 14 to 1. Kyrie Irving may or may not be an interesting long shot at 17 to 1. Kevin Durant at 37 to 2, Steph Curry at 20 to 1. Are there any long shots that you think are going to win it, or is the chalk the obvious choice barring injury?
Yeah, I think the chalk is James Harden. There's no doubt, especially the way that Houston's playing. I mean, this is a team that could potentially get the #1 seed. And so barring injury, I hate to say it, ever since he had that 60-plus game with the triple-double, it seemed like everybody had already crowned him. Well, I don't think that's necessarily fair. It looks like they crowned his ass, right? It really does. So you take a shot maybe with, like you said, Kyrie Irving, just because I do think that the Celtics could be the #1 seed, but the Milwaukee Bucks, they're not playing very good basketball. LeBron James has been so bipolar this year. Kevin Durant, I thought would be in the mix, but he's up and down. So I hate to say it, especially at those odds. My kind of money would not be on those type of odds, but it sure looks like, unless barring injury, that James Harden is a likely slam dunk. If I were to take a shot in the dark, it would be Kyrie Irving. If he starts to really put together a streak of good basketball between now and the playoffs, and the Celtics lock up the #1 seed and even go in with one of the better records in the NBA, I wouldn't be shocked. That would be my underdog at 17 to 1, but it does look like James Harden is going to be the MVP.
Yeah, and again, I do want to remind the people watching that when you're talking about going for long shots, much like in horse racing, it's not always the guy that you think is going to win, but you want to take those high percentage long shots, and then over a lifetime of betting, more times than not, those high percentage long shots will come in and you'll come out ahead. So it's not like you don't always pick the guy that you'd be rooting for if you were simply picking names out of a hat, a bunch of friends put money in a pool. I would say that Kyrie Irving is a decent long shot because of some of the same reasons that Troy said. But look, he was acquired for the sole reason of really putting Boston over the top. Of course, this is purely on the regular season only, but if they do have the best record in the East, that would certainly make him, a decent candidate. And as you said, Kevin Durant's been up and down, and of course the theory being that he and Steph Curry might, split the vote there as far as being teammates. But I can kind of see, Golden State and almost all certainty they'll be running away with it at the end, and because of the little rivalry that he's got going with Westbrook, that maybe his teammates wouldn't mind seeing him get the MVP, and they might set him up a little bit, and there might be a little bit of public campaigning. So I think that Kevin Durant is at least a good long shot. But of course, if you're going to flat out ask me to make a prediction without, with being completely oblivious to what the odds are, not from a betting standpoint, yeah. I mean, how can you say it's not going to be James Harden unless, of course, there's some terrible injury, which we know can certainly happen in the NBA. But yeah, I think James Harden is the clear-cut favorite. But I do think that I would probably say Durant a little bit ahead of Kyrie Irving would probably be my best long shot. So we're definitely going to join you folks again next Monday, but we'll preview the Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday portfolio. But before we do wind it up, Troy, why don't you tell the folks what they can get at TroyWins.com?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. We're rocking and rolling right now, and our main focus is indeed in college basketball, but we do pick our spots in the NBA when we find it necessary. But come take a look. Absolutely happy to give folks a 3-day trial, a 5-day trial, 7-day trial. Come take a look. That's TroyWins.com. Very easy link to click on there to come get your free trial. We're happy to take care of you.
And at OffshoreInsiders.com, we actually give you some free picks. But in addition, look, the truth is my picks aren't made until my databases are updated with the odds. So I don't even know who I'm going to have on Saturday and Sunday. I do know, some games that I already have circled that I'll be looking at. But things have been going very well since 1988. I've been in this business, and a nice solid year. Of course, maybe a little streakier than I'd like, but still a solid year, and it's going to get even better. So make sure you visit me at OffshoreInsiders.com. And again, subscribe to Sportsbook Review's YouTube page so you do not miss a broadcast. We'll be recording on Monday and Friday, looking at not only that day's games, but the games for the next couple days. And we will talk to you again on Monday here at SportsbookReview.com.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to our channel. Now, we've put a lot of work into producing all these free videos, so please help us out and keep all our content free for you forever by simply liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. Now, not to mention, a visit to our industry-leading website will warm the hearts of all our SBR employees, especially myself. Now, the links are over there to the left, so do check those out. Thanks for watching.